start Unreal again. And this can be done from either the launcher or from the application icon on your desktop. I'll show you both ways. So if you use Unreal as an application directly like this, then you get this recent project. And as you can see, forget the rest of the ones. The first one, bowling game underscore UE. That's the one we need. We select and we click open project. If you go the Epic Games Launcher route, then we'll open that up. And if you go to library, and it's arranged in alphabetical orders. So B, bowling game UE, there you go. So you can open it from here, or you can open the engine from here. Either way, whichever is the fastest for you. But let's look at a third way, which will require me to find out or know exactly where my project is, which should always be the case. And there you have it, bowling game underscore game underscore UE. And all the files related to this project is over here. Now, going forward, if you have to transfer this project over to a different PC, then you can just copy this folder, right click, copy, and paste it somewhere else. And then you can start it up in a different PC with Unreal installed, right? In any case, if you're using a plugin, which may not be present in a different PC, that PC's Unreal Engine will let you know, hey, this XYZ plugin was used in this project. Do you want to continue without it because it's not present? Then you have an option to disable it and continue, or it will just outright tell you that it cannot continue because it's just too integrated. So those would be the only reasons why it would not work in a different PC like this. Otherwise, this is the easiest way of transferring a project from a PC to a different PC. Now, if you remember content browser from the bottom section, the content folder inside your folder is inside your project folder is the exact representation of your content browser folder structure. Okay. Speaking of which, if you select everything here and press delete, except for the content folder, you can still recover your project. And by that, I mean, even the project file, if you delete that or gets deleted or gets corrupted for any reason, all of this, okay, except the content folder, it is absolutely recoverable. If you lose the content folder, ciao, it's tata bye-bye for project. Okay, it's gone. You cannot get it back, no matter what you do, right? So keep that in mind. If you have a project, this would be your final project folder. Inside it, everything is expendable except for content folder. It's the sacred folder, right? You would prefer not to fidget inside here, no copy pasting. It is possible, but it's suggested you don't copy paste. There are other ways of bringing files from a different project into this project. There are ways, right? And there's a legitimate way inside the engine to do it. Anyways, let's resume. So you can double click this U project file as well to open up the project directly without having to first open the engine and then open the project. So say, for example, you're working on a particular project for a pretty long time. You can just right click this project file and send to desktop as a shortcut as your current running project. And it will not look like your Unreal Engine icon because this is blue in color. Okay. So that way you wouldn't have to, you wouldn't either go to the launcher, neither open up the engine. You can just directly just open it up. Okay. And that will just open up the engine as well as the project directly. All right. So in this case, I've opened up the engine first, select the project, press open. Again, it'll take a little bit of time. And there you are. This is where we left off. This is our level. Now, if this wasn't set as the maps and modes default editor level over here, then something else would open and you would have to find this level file inside maps and open it up or wherever you had stored it. Okay. Now let's get on with our basic structure creation. Now we need a floor as a lane. The world has a grid, and that lets you know where, I would say in human terms, the sea level. Okay. This is the base level. All right. And there is a XYZ grid to this, wherein I guess world origin is right over here. So if I reset the position of the floor, you'll see the pivot of the object orients itself exactly where the world origin is at 0, 0, 0. Now I don't need it at floor level, slightly higher would do. I do need some additional information before I go ahead and create the lane. These are basic information that I can get from anywhere, right? And probably just get a window, browser window, and type, say, bowling ball lane dimensions. Okay. You would need this because you need the exact dimensions for a bowling lane in order to make it somewhat realistic, if not completely realistic. There are diagrams as well. You can refer to them. Bowling alley dimensions. I guess there is this image that you can refer to, or it's a PDF. Now, this is very specific because we are not going that super specific. All right. Generally, it's a two-person lane system, I guess. I'm not pretty familiar with the rules of the game, but you have a line beyond which you have a player run up. They basically take a run up till here, and you're not supposed to cross this line. You get a ball return section where all your balls come back after they have crossed the pit. So you collect your ball from here, you throw it, and there is a gutter and a lane. All right. This is the front line, and beyond which you have a section wherein your pins reside. Okay. And then there's a pit within which there's a pin setter machine which will pick up the fallen pins and reset them and then maybe put the next set down for you. Right. That's your basic rule. We just need one lane worth of dimensions, which is 42 inches wide and 60 feet long. Funny enough, how none of them are in centimeters, because I need both of them in centimeters. So 42 inches wide. I'll just drag 42 inches to centimeter. That gives me 106 centimeters wide. Here, I have an object which has a scale relative to its original size. So if I say wide, as in y dimension, not x, not z, z is up facing, x is front facing, which is kind of the standard inside Unreal. Okay, z is up and x is front, and y is sideways, perpendicular to x. Okay, we cannot calculate dimensions directly inside the scale like this. So if I type in 106, this is what is going to happen. You're going to get a, I don't know what this is. This is a word, right? Especially because there is a lock. So is there a question? I just heard somebody. I thought there's a question. I guess not. All right. So I can disable the lock and put in a value as well, but that will still not give me the correct size, because what I'm doing here is multiplying y 106 times its actual size for it to become like this, which is not the correct way of setting my dimensions. The problem with this geometry is it came with a certain dimension already as its initial scale. And based off of that, I cannot make a 100% confirmed setup for the lane. You could go to top view and use this method, wherein if you hold your middle mouse button, click and drag, you get a dimension. Okay. And this number that you can see, it's actually centimeters. So if I middle mouse click and drag from the length one end to the other, it says it's 1000 and the width is 330. So this is kind of not going to work for me because I can fiddle around with it and then I'll have to constantly go back and forth to make it work. So if I go to top view, by the way, there are shortcuts to get around these views. So if you hold control and middle click and drag to the corner or to the top, actually, you go to top view. And if you hold control, middle mouse button, click and drag to the bottom diagonal corner, you go back to perspective. So top, perspective, top, sorry, this is left, sorry, top, perspective, top, perspective. These are the two that is you're going to use a lot. If you go bottom, well, control middle click left, then you go back, control middle click right, you go front, control middle right diagonal top would be left, and control middle left diagonal top would be right. Okay, so it's very difficult to remember, but the easiest is control middle diagonal bottom any direction is perspective, and top is top. Perspective, top, perspective, top. All right, so easy way to get around. And I can go back to top and calculate the distance. This is 200, so it's twice as much because I need 106. Let's go up again and calculate. Now it's 120. Now, here's the thing. Since this is not a rule bound game, I can cheat a little bit. I don't exactly need 106. So that's fine. I could do with a lesser amount of floor size. All right. Going forward, we can create a better environment. Right now, we just have this exterior. We are using this base floor model. We're going to replace it as well. And next, we need to know what is the length, which is 60 feet long. So if I drag 60 feet in centimeters, that would be 1828 centimeters. So if I go to top view and calculate this, it's coming to about 1000, right? So let me extend this. Sorry for that. And let's extend this again. I guess I have to extend it at least till here, right? So almost double the size. Let's calculate now. It's way beyond. Still too long. Still too long. 1860s, more or less there. Okay. So that is one method. The reason why I'm doing this and not creating my own geometry is because this geometry already comes with collision. So I don't have to do much. I can design my base with this and then finally replace it later with the inbuilt geometry tools and create like a lane and a pit later on. Okay, so we'll keep this for now. And we can start with the first aspect of the game, which is the player. We have the environment temporarily in place. We just need to start off with the player, because if we don't, then we don't have a place to start with. Okay. So for that, what we need to do is create a blueprint which will let us possess a pawn and play the game. So let me talk a little bit about blueprint. Blueprints are basically visual scriptable file, okay, that just takes away the pain of having to code any kind of interactivity. A blueprint can hold just data, or a blueprint can hold actors that can talk to each other and the rest of the level and have data as well, which is what we're going to do here, right? Now, I have a folder which has a maps subfolder. I'm going to create another subfolder. We'll call it, you can call it two things, blueprints or we can call it BP. Okay, BP is used a lot as well in Unreal. So we'll call it blueprints. Okay, and I think I press F1 instead of F2. F2 is for renaming. Okay, and inside here, we can right click and you'll see there's a list containing menus of items that I can create by default inside the engine. All of these are engine contents. Okay. Now the thing is, there are a few which is used a lot. So I don't want to be going into blueprint and then blueprint class every single time because it's available right here. I can even go to blueprints and new empty blueprint class. I can do that as well. Easiest way is to right click in an empty folder and go blueprint class. And a class is basically a way for you to define. It's the easiest way to explain it is like a template. Okay. It will contain data variables as variables. It can create functions. It can contain components. And all it does is gives you a way to interact either with other actors, other blueprints, the level, or just contain data, right? So anybody from the programming background will feel right at home with class. And there are various classes that you can start with. You can start with the most basic thing, which is the actor, or you can have pre-created classes, like for example, character, which is an actor with a pawn system and a body for a character. So all of that is there. We just need a pawn. Okay. If you hover over it, it says a pawn is an actor that can be possessed. So it's basically this with the capacity for you to be able to possess it. It's not just an actor for being an actor's sake. Anything in Unreal is an actor. So this is an actor, this is an actor, this is an actor, this is an actor. So you're not just creating an actor, you're creating an actor that can be possessed. So pawn, and we'll name it BP underscore player. Well, that's fine. BP underscore player. All right. And now if you double click this, you get this window, which is your blueprint editor window. Generally, blueprint in itself is a session of its own. There is a lot going on inside blueprint that can be or is explained in order for you to get a good grasp on how the system works. But I'll try to give you as much information without making this class all about blueprint. All right. So as you can see, there is a toolbar on top, which is to do with this blueprint actor. So if I compile, it'll compile this blueprint actor. If I save, it'll save this blueprint actor. If I click browse, it will find out where it is in the content browser. Then find certain things inside the blueprint. Class settings, defaults, these are details regarding this blueprint. And play is it'll simulate from here. Okay. You have your component section. So if a car is a blueprint, the component would be tires, engine, steering wheel. These are stuff that make up the car. So if you imagine this player as a blueprint, the components would be a ball, a way to see into the level, which is a camera, and a directionality method to throw the ball. So those would be my components. Okay. My blueprint section will contain any kind of new variable that I create inside this blueprint, any kind of new data that I store inside this blueprint that I create and then store, any kind of function that I create and store. Function is value with a purpose. All right. So that's your my blueprint section. And your details panel is like any other details panel in any other tool inside Unreal, where you select something and it gives you details. By default, it will give you a detail regarding this blueprint unless you click in an empty area, because by default it's selected this BP player self, which is the blueprint itself. Okay. So you're getting the blueprint's overall details. Now we're going to add a few components to this. All right. And the way to do it is by this add component button. Let's go back to our whiteboard. I'm sure you guys hate the whiteboard by now, right? Very typical class like, but it's helpful. I'm sorry. All right. So as a player, what do you need? Well, we're not creating a AAA class game. All right. No, not even close. So we don't need a character with hands and animation to pick up the ball and throw it. And let's just keep all that aside. All we need to know is that we have the ball in place, which is in front of us, and a guiding system that is pointed in the direction of the lane, and a way in which we can throw. All right, so like a force or a impulse system that will throw the ball. Okay, and not just that, when we possess this player, we need to be able to see into the world. Okay, so we need a camera as well. So let's construct this visually. We need a camera. Bad drawing skills, by the way. That'll let us see into the world. We should be able to see the ball in front of us. Let's try again. And we need a guidance system that is going to tell us which direction the ball is going to launch. And then we'll have to code a functionality that will allow the players to have an input system that when clicked, the ball launches. As simple as that. All right. The rest is going to be taken care of by the inbuilt physics system of the engine, where we provide the ball some physics, we provide the pins some physics. The pins is going to come later, and we'll come to the rest of the stuff later. All right. So I'll minimize this. So what all things do we need? First and foremost, we need a way to look into the world when we possess this player. Like if you imagine playing a third-person character game, when you shift from cinematic camera back to your player's camera, that character does have a camera at the back, right? So you do need it. In this case, it's not a third-person view. It's just a view into straight in front of you. It's like a first-person view without your hands, without a view model, just the ball. All right. So add component. And this component, I'm going to type camera. And there are two cameras. We don't need a cine camera because we don't want it. We don't want things in a presented to us as a cinematic way. We just want a way to look into the world. So I'm going to choose only camera, the first one. So I'll click on it, and that gives me my camera, and I can visually see it if I'm in the viewport section. If I'm in the event graph, this is where my recipe is going to get created for what this blueprint is supposed to do. So basically, if this was an IDE, this would be where you would code. Construction script is a separate concept. We'll come to it later. But first, you need to understand viewport is a tangible look into what you're creating. So it's a visual representation of what this blueprint is supposed to be. If this blueprint never had any tangible component to it and only data, then you would never need to come to viewport because you don't need to see what it looks like. You can only just remain in event graph and do all the coding and you're done. But this is visual. So we will need viewport. And as you can see, I've brought in a camera, all right? So what's the next obvious thing that I need? And the next obvious thing that I need is the ball, because that's what's going to get thrown from me, all right, as part of the player. So I need to create the ball first. So we'll get out. There's an easy way of getting the ball in here. And intuitively, if you think, you'd go to add component and type geometry and get a slot for a geometry and add a particular geometry in that slot. That would do. And there is a way of doing it. There are two ways, actually. One is add component, and there are primitives that you can add directly, like sphere. So you type sphere, you get a sphere, and you're done. And you can reduce the scale of the sphere to match something close to being a bowling ball size. We don't know that yet. We'll find that out. And if you go from change from lit, oh, you don't get to change anything here. So anyways, if you go out, you can place this player in the world and then check out whether this ball even has any collision or not. All right. So we don't want to do the things this way because one, we are working with arbitrary values in scale. So we don't exactly know the correct size of this ball. So I'm not going to use this. Okay. The second way would be to add a static mesh component. Static mesh means geometry. So as a component, if I add a static mesh, which is the last in this list of search, then I get an empty static mesh wherein in the slot in the details panel, I can add whatever geometry I want. So again, if I add a sphere from the list, or I could have added anything else, right? that would appear as the geometry. I will be doing it in this method, but I need to create the geometry first, because the basic static meshes that come either bundled with the engine, like sphere, cube, triangle, cone, and all of that, I don't want that, because again, if I use those, I'll have to work with a scale that I don't know exactly about, and I'll have to hand measure everything. So I don't want to do that. So I'll keep static mesh, but I will reset it to be empty. Okay. And also I will make sure, actually, you know what? I'll delete the static mesh because I want to show there's a proper way of adding it as well. So I'll compile, save it, and maybe close this blueprint open again, because this camera kind of lost its material for a second. Anyways, so let's get back to creating the ball first, right? I'll go back to Chrome, and what I need now is another tab. We'll call it bowling ball dimensions. And bowling ball have a diameter of 21 centimeter. Thank you for centimeters. All right. Let's thank whoever has done this. All right. So we can work with 21.8. I think we can make it 22 as well. All right. So again, do we get in a sphere, which is a primitive, go to top view, measure it out, which should be right about this much, 28, right? So right about this much, and then scale it down to that size. Do we do that? No, there is a better way of doing things. And going forward, we're going to be using that method to build our base as well. Actually, no, we're going to use a different system for base, but still, this is still a better system. So what I need to do here is to access the inbuilt geometry creation tool, and that is inside modes. Modes is basically your access to some special tools like landscape, foliage editing, or brushing, foliage painting, mesh painting, which is vertex painting, and modeling tools, which we enabled, if you remember, at the very beginning when we went to settings, plugins, and modeling tools, editor mode. We enabled it and we restarted the engine. That because of that, we have this modeling section now. So if I click this, nothing changes. It's just that we get a new panel over here called modeling, which will be filled up with whatever tool I select from this tab. So I need to create a sphere. So I'll select sphere. And if I hover my mouse over any surface, you'll see it'll try to snap to the vertexes of that surface. That's good for me. So a few things. Here, I can even put down the actual radius of the geometry that I'm creating. The only problem is I have a diameter, right? Also a diameter. So 22 divided by 2 is going to be 11. So radius is going to be half. So I'm going to put in 11 here. As you can see, it updated, and this